The bitter wind howled outside as Carter Quinn's custom Tesla slid across a patch of black ice, forcing him to grip the steering wheel with white knuckles. This wasn't how a 32-year-old tech billionaire typically spent his Thursday evenings lost on a rural back road in Vermont during what was quickly becoming the blizzard of the decade. He'd only planned to make a brief appearance at a potential acquisition meeting in Burlington before flying back to Manhattan, but Mother Nature clearly had other plans. "Recalculating route," his GPS announced uselessly as the screen flickered between signal and no signal. Carter glanced at his phone. No bars. Perfect. When the first snowflakes had begun falling that morning, the weatherman had promised only a light dusting. Now, 6 hours later, visibility had dropped to mere feet, and the snow was piling up faster than Carter had ever seen. His Tesla, for all its cutting-edge technology and luxury features, wasn't designed for navigating unplowed country roads in near whiteout conditions. The car slid again, this time more severely. Carter eased off the accelerator, remembering driver's ed lessons from half a lifetime ago. Don't brake hard on ice, steer into the skid. He managed to regain control, but his confidence was shaken. Up ahead, through the curtain of white, a warm yellow glow caught his eye, a small cluster of lights just visible through the trees. Carter squinted. The lights belonged to a small building set back from the road. A wooden sign, barely visible under its cap of snow, swung in the wind. "The Pineview Inn," it read, in carved letters. Swallowing his pride, Carter carefully guided the Tesla into what he hoped was the driveway. He couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, but the building looked like a large converted farmhouse with a wrap-around porch and smoke rising from a chimney. Right now, any port in a storm would do, even if this particular port looked like it hadn't been updated since the Reagan administration. He parked as close to the entrance as possible and braced himself before opening the car door. The wind immediately tore it from his grasp, slamming it back against its hinges. Snow stung his face as he grabbed his overnight bag from the passenger seat and made a dash for the porch. By the time he reached the door, his Italian leather shoes were soaked through, and snow had worked its way inside his cashmere coat. Carter stamped his feet on the welcome mat and pushed open the heavy wooden door. Warmth enveloped him immediately. The lobby was small, but inviting a reception desk to the left, a sitting area with a roaring fireplace to the right. The decor was rustic and dated, but impeccably clean. A Christmas tree stood in one corner, decorated with handmade ornaments and twinkling lights. The scent of pine, cinnamon, and something baking filled the air. "Hello?" Carter called, approaching the empty reception desk. A small brass bell sat on the counter, and he tapped it twice. "Coming," a female voice called from somewhere in the back. "Just a moment." Carter unbuttoned his coat and ran a hand through his snow-dampened hair. He glanced around the lobby again, noting the framed photographs of local landscapes on the walls and the collection of well-worn paperback books available for guests. Nothing like the five-star hotels he usually frequented. The sound of footsteps drew his attention back to the desk, where a woman now stood, slightly out of breath. She appeared to be around his age, with warm brown eyes and chestnut hair pulled back in a messy bun. A few wisps had escaped and framed her face. She wore a simple green sweater with the inn's logo embroidered on it. "Hi there, welcome to Pineview Inn. I'm Maddie Vega, but everyone calls me Maddie." Her smile was genuine, the kind that reached her eyes. "You must be half frozen. That storm came out of nowhere, didn't it?" Carter nodded, oddly transfixed by the smudge of flour on her cheek. "Carter Quinn. I was on my way to Burlington when the storm got too bad. I'm hoping you have a room available for the night." Maddie's eyebrows rose slightly at his name, and Carter braced himself for the usual reaction. His face had been on the cover of Fortune magazine twice in the past year, and the recent acquisition of Tech Vault had made headlines across the business world. But if Maddie recognized him, she hit it well. "You're in luck, Mr. Quinn. We have several rooms available. It's our slow season, and most of our reservations canceled when the storm warnings upgraded." She turned to a computer that looked at least a decade old. "How about room 5? It has a nice view of the mountains. Well, when you can see them through the snow. That's fine, Carter said, pulling out his wallet. Do you take American Express Black? Maddie's lips twitched with amusement. We do take credit cards, but the lines are down because of the storm. Cash works, or we can settle up when the systems are back online. Carter frowned. He rarely carried cash, especially not in the amounts that would cover a hotel stay. I don't have much cash on me. Don't worry about it, Maddie said, waving a hand dismissively. We can figure it out tomorrow. I think right now you need to get warm and dry before you catch pneumonia. She reached under the counter and produced an old-fashioned metal key attached to a wooden keychain. Room 5 is up the stairs, third door on the right. The radiator knob can stick, sometimes give it a good twist if it doesn't turn on right away. Carter accepted the key, surprised by the casual trust. In his world, nothing came without immediate payment and contracts signed in triplicate. The dining room is through there, Maddie continued, pointing to a doorway behind him. We're serving beef stew tonight, along with fresh bread. Kitchen's open for another hour if you're hungry. Thank you, Carter said, suddenly aware of how hungry he actually was. His last meal had been a rushed protein bar at the airport that morning. Oh, and Mr. Quinn, Maddie called as he turned toward the stairs. Your car, it's electric, right? We don't have a charging station, but we do have an outlet on the porch that might work in a pinch. Though I should warn you, with this storm, the power might go out. Carter hadn't even thought about charging the Tesla. Thank you for the tip. I'll worry about that tomorrow, Maddie nodded. The weather service is saying this storm might last through tomorrow, possibly into Saturday. Just so you know. Carter felt a flash of panic. He had meetings scheduled in New York tomorrow, important ones. Surely the main roads will be cleared by morning. Maddie gave him a sympathetic smile. This isn't the city, Mr. Quinn. We have exactly 2 snowplows for the entire county, and they'll clear the emergency routes first. The back roads might not see a plow for days. Days. Carter suppressed a groan. This was a disaster. His assistant would have to reschedule everything, and the board wouldn't be pleased about the delay on the merger talks. If you need anything else, just let me know, Maddie said, apparently oblivious to his internal crisis. The inn's phone still works, even when the power's out old landline system, and we have generators for the essentials. Carter nodded his thanks and headed up the stairs, key in hand. The steps creaked under his weight, and the handrail felt worn smooth by countless hands. The hallway was lined with more local photographs and simple landscape paintings. Room 5 was exactly where Maddie had said, third door on the right, with a small brass number on the door. The room was quaint. A full-sized bed with a patchwork quilt, a nightstand with a lamp and a small digital clock, a dresser with a mirror above it, a wooden chair by the window, a small bathroom with a shower stall. No minibar, no flat-screen TV, no luxury amenities, just clean, basic accommodations. Carter set his bag down and pulled out his phone again. Still no signal. He tried the room's landline phone and got a dial tone at least. He called his assistant's number from memory. Sophie? It's Carter. I've run into a bit of a situation. He explained about the storm and his unexpected accommodation. You'll need to reschedule tomorrow's meetings. I'm stuck at a place called the Pineview Inn. He realized he wasn't entirely sure where he was. Somewhere in Vermont. I'll call with more details when I can. After hanging up, Carter changed out of his wet clothes into the only casual outfit he'd packed, dark jeans and a gray cashmere sweater. He ran a comb through his hair and headed back downstairs, stomach growling at the thought of dinner. The dining room was small, just 8 tables covered in checked tablecloths. 3 were occupied by what appeared to be other stranded travelers, all looking equally disgruntled about their situation. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, its fire casting a warm glow over the room. Christmas decorations here, 2 garlands of evergreen draped along the windows, red candles on each table. Carter chose a table near the fireplace and sat down. A teenage boy with a family resemblance to Maddie approached with a menu and a glass of water. Evening, sir. I'm Leo, Maddie's brother. We're running a limited menu tonight because of the storm, but the beef stew is really good. My sister made it this morning. I'll have that, Carter said, not bothering to look at the menu. And whatever wine you'd recommend to go with it. Leo grinned. We're not exactly a wine kind of place, but we do have some decent craft beers from a local brewery. The amber ale goes great with the stew." "That's fine," Carter agreed, wondering when he'd last had beer with dinner. Probably college. As Leo walked away, Carter checked his phone again out of habit. Still no signal. He stared into the fire, thinking about all the work piling up in his absence. The Westfield deal was in a crucial stage. Any delay could cause problems. And the board meeting on Monday, he needed time to prepare for that. "Mind if I join you? All the other tables are taken." Carter looked up to find Maddie standing there, holding a bowl of stew and a plate of bread. The dining room had indeed filled up while he'd been lost in thought, apparently. Other travelers had found their way to the inn as well. "Please," he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Maddie sat down and placed her food on the table. "Sorry about this. I usually eat in the kitchen, but we've had a rush of check-ins in the last half hour." 4 more stranded travelers were completely full now. "More business is good, isn't it?" Carter asked. "Yes and no. Good for the bottom line, but more people means more chance of the generator not being enough if the power goes out." She tore off a piece of bread. "So Burlington, huh? Business or pleasure?" "Business," Carter replied. "A meeting that could have been an email, as it turns out." Maddie smiled. "Those are the worst. What kind of business are you in, if you don't mind me asking?" Carter hesitated. When people learned who he was, conversations changed. They either wanted something from him or became uncomfortable around him. He'd learned to be cautious about revealing too much too quickly. "Tech," he said simply. "Software development." Leo arrived with Carter's stew and beer, saving him from elaborating. "Here you go, sir. Enjoy." The stew smelled incredible rich, hearty, with chunks of beef, potatoes, and carrots visible. The bread alongside it was clearly homemade, still slightly warm. Carter took a bite and was pleasantly surprised. It was delicious, better than many restaurant meals he'd had recently. "This is excellent," he said honestly. Maddie's face lit up. "Thank you. It's our grandmother's recipe. The secret is cooking it low and slow for hours." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. Carter found himself studying Maddie when she wasn't looking. There was something refreshing about her lack of pretense. No designer clothes, no carefully crafted image, just a woman in a simple sweater with flour on her cheek, running an inn in the middle of nowhere. "Have you owned this place long?" he asked. Maddie nodded. "Almost 5 years now. It was my grandparents before that. I took it over when my grandmother couldn't manage it anymore." "Was that always the plan? To run the family business?" Maddie laughed softly. "Not even close. I was living in Boston, working in marketing for a hotel chain. The corporate ladder, expense accounts, the whole 9 yards. She took a sip of her water. "Then my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother needed help. I came back temporarily, just to get things in order, maybe hire a manager. But something about this place, it gets under your skin." Carter could understand that. His own company had started in his college dorm room, a simple app designed to solve a specific problem. He'd never intended it to grow into a tech empire, but one success had led to another. And before he knew it, he was the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation. "Do you miss the city?" he asked. "Sometimes," Maddie admitted. "The restaurants, the energy. But I don't miss the traffic or the noise or the constant pressure. Life's simpler here." "Simpler isn't always better," Carter said before he could stop himself. Maddie raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it? What do you miss by not being wherever you're supposed to be tomorrow?" "Meetings, decisions that affect thousands of employees, responsibilities." "Important stuff," Maddie acknowledged. "But is missing one day of it going to change the world?" Carter opened his mouth to say yes, it might, then closed it again. The truth was, Sophie was perfectly capable of handling things for a day or two. The meetings could be rescheduled. The world of Quinn Technologies would continue turning without him physically present. "Maybe not," he conceded. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. "That's our cue," Maddie said, standing up. "I need to check the generator, make sure it's ready if the power goes out completely." She gathered her dishes. "Enjoy the rest of your dinner, Mr. Quinn." "Carter," he said. "Please call me Carter." She smiled. "Carter, then. Good night." As she walked away, Carter realized he'd been so caught up in their conversation that he'd forgotten to check his phone for the past 20 minutes, a rare occurrence for him. He pulled it out now and saw that he still had no service, but somehow it didn't bother him quite as much as it had earlier. He finished his stew and beer, then returned to his room. The building had grown quieter, most guests having retired for the evening. Carter sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the simple room. No TV, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just the sound of the wind outside and the occasional creak of the old building settling. For the first time in years, Carter had nothing urgent demanding his attention. No emails to answer, no calls to return, no reports to review. Just an unexpected pause in his otherwise relentless schedule. He thought about what Maddie had said about simpler being better. His life hadn't been simple in a very long time. Even his apartment, with all its luxury and space, was full of smart devices and screens constantly feeding him information. When was the last time he'd sat in silence without reaching for his phone? Carter got ready for bed, washing up in the small bathroom with its basic amenities. The water pressure was surprisingly good, at least. He changed into the t-shirt and sweats he'd packed for sleeping and climbed into bed. The mattress was firmer than he was used to, but not uncomfortable. The patchwork quilt was heavy and warm. Outside, the storm continued to rage, snow and ice pelting against the window. But inside, it was warm and quiet. Carter closed his eyes, expecting to lie awake, worrying about all the things he wasn't doing. Instead, lulled by the distant sound of the wind and the unfamiliar peace of having nowhere to be, he fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. A loud crash jolted Carter awake. He sat up, disoriented in the unfamiliar darkness. The digital clock on the nightstand was blank. The power had gone out. Another crash sounded from downstairs, followed by voices. Carter fumbled for his phone and turned on its flashlight. The screen showed 3:17 a.m. and still no service. He pulled on his jeans and sweater and made his way to the door. The hallway was dark, except for the glow of emergency lights. Another loud noise came from below, and Carter followed the sound to the stairs. The lobby was illuminated by lanterns and candles. Maddie stood near the front door, directing a man who was bringing in firewood. She wore flannel pajama pants and a heavy sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. "What's happening?" Carter asked, joining her at the door. Maddie turned, surprise registering on her face. "Sorry if we woke you. The power went out about 20 minutes ago and part of a tree branch came down on the porch. We're bringing in extra firewood to keep the common areas warm." "Can I help?" Carter offered, surprising himself. Maddie smiled. "Sure. We're stacking it over there by the fireplace. I'm making coffee on the camping stove in the kitchen if you want some when you're done." Carter joined the man who introduced himself as Stan, the inn's handyman, in bringing in armloads of wood from the covered pile on the side of the porch. The work was physical and unfamiliar, but oddly satisfying. By the time they finished, Carter was warm despite the chill in the air. "Coffee's ready," Maddie called from the doorway to the kitchen. "Come warm up." The kitchen was cozy, lit by several battery-powered lanterns. A camping stove sat on the counter, a pot of coffee steaming on top of it. Maddie poured 3 mugs and handed them around. "Thanks for the help," she said to Carter. "Not exactly what you signed up for when you checked in, I'm sure." Carter took a sip of coffee, strong and hot, exactly what he needed. "It's fine. Not like I had anything else scheduled for 3 a.m. Maddie laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Well, the generator's running the essentials, some heat, the water pumps, refrigeration. But we're conserving fuel by not running electricity to the guest rooms. If you're cold, you can grab extra blankets from the linen closet at the end of the hall." "I'll be fine," Carter said. "How long do these power outages usually last?" "Depends on how widespread the damage is," Stan said, warming his hands around his mug. "Could be a few hours, could be days. They'll prioritize fixing lines to the hospital and emergency services first." Days without power. Carter tried to imagine his reaction if the power went out in his Manhattan penthouse for days. The inconvenience, the outrage, the immediate relocation to a 5-star hotel. But here, surrounded by lantern light and the smell of coffee, It seemed less like a crisis and more like an adventure. "Well, I should get back to bed," Stan said, finishing his coffee. "Got to be up at first light to check the roof, make sure that branch didn't do any damage." After Stan left, Carter and Maddie sat in companionable silence for a few moments. The kitchen was warm from the camping stove, a sanctuary from the cold, dark night outside. "So," Maddie said finally, "since we're both awake at this ungodly hour, tell me more about yourself, Carter Quinn. What does a tech guy from the city do for fun?" Carter considered the question. What did he do for fun? Work consumed most of his time. When he wasn't working, he was either at the gym with his trainer, at business dinners, or attending charity events that were more about networking than the causes. "I don't have much free time," he admitted, "but I enjoy sailing when I can get away, and running." "Sailing and running," Maddie repeated with a small smile, "both solitary activities." Carter hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. "I guess they are. What about you? What does an innkeeper do for fun in the middle of nowhere?" "Oh, we have wild parties every weekend," Maddie said with a straight face. "Cow tipping, square dancing, the works." Carter raised an eyebrow, and she laughed. "I hike a lot," she said more seriously. "Read by the fire. Help with community events. In the summer, I grow a ridiculous amount of vegetables in the garden out back." "That sounds boring," Maddie supplied. "Peaceful," Carter corrected. "Different from my life, but not in a bad way." Maddie studied him over the rim of her mug. "Your life must be exciting, big city, important job." "It's busy," Carter said, "but I'm not sure exciting is the right word. It's a lot of meetings and decisions and problems to solve." "But you enjoy it." The question gave Carter pause. Did he enjoy his life? He was proud of what he'd built, certainly. Proud of the problems his company solved, the jobs it created. But enjoy? When was the last time he'd felt joy in his daily routine? "It's what I'm good at," he said finally. "Building things, solving problems. It's satisfying." Maddie nodded, seeming to understand what he wasn't saying. There's a difference between satisfaction and joy, though, isn't there? The question hung in the air between them, unexpectedly profound, for a conversation held over coffee at 3:30 in the morning. Before Carter could formulate a response, a timer on the counter beeped softly. Oh, the bread. Maddie stood and moved to the old-fashioned oven in the corner of the kitchen. She pulled on oven mitts and opened the door, releasing the mouth-watering scent of fresh-baked bread. "I always bake when I can't sleep, and with the power out, it seemed like a good idea to have extra bread ready for breakfast." She set the loaf on a cooling rack on the counter. The bread was golden brown and perfectly formed. "That looks professional," Carter commented. "Thanks. Baking was my grandmother's specialty. She taught me everything I know." Maddie ran a finger lightly over the crust, testing it. "It needs to cool, but if you're still awake in about 30 minutes, you're welcome to try a slice with some of last summer's blackberry jam." "I'd like that," Carter said, surprised to find he meant it. The thought of warm bread and homemade jam at 4 a.m. was suddenly more appealing than any five-star restaurant meal he'd had in months. "Great. I'm going to check on the other guests, make sure everyone has enough blankets. Feel free to hang out here where it's warm." Maddie grabbed a lantern and headed for the door. "Oh, and Carter, for what it's worth, you seem like someone who could use a little more joy in his life." With that, she was gone, leaving Carter alone with his coffee and her words echoing in his mind. When Maddie returned 30 minutes later, she found Carter still sitting at the kitchen table, staring into his empty coffee mug. She refilled it without asking and cut 2 thick slices from the now-cooled loaf of bread. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, setting a jar of deep purple jam on the table between them. Carter watched as she spread the jam on her slice. "I was just thinking about what you said, about joy versus satisfaction." "And?" She pushed the other slice toward him. Carter spread jam on his bread and took a bite. The combination of warm, crusty bread and sweet tart jam was perfect. "This is really good." "You're changing the subject," Maddie noted, but she was smiling. "But thank you. The berries grow wild on the property. My grandmother taught me how to make jam when I was 10. "My grandmother taught me how to play chess," Carter offered. She was ruthless, never let me win, even when I was a kid. Did you eventually beat her? Once, when I was 16, she demanded a rematch immediately and destroyed me. The memory made him smile. She said one victory didn't make me a champion. Smart woman? Maddie took another bite of her bread. So, back to Joy? Do you have any in your life, Carter Quinn? Carter considered deflecting again, but something about the pre-dawn darkness and Maddie's direct gaze made honesty seem like the only option. Not much lately. Work takes up most of my time and energy. What about family? Friends? My parents live in Arizona. I see them at Christmas and maybe once or twice during the year. Friends? He paused. Did he have friends? Real ones? Not business associates or people who wanted something from him? I've lost touch with most of my college friends. Life got busy. Maddie nodded, not judgmentally, just acknowledgement. That happens. Life has a way of narrowing our focus if we let it. What about you? Carter asked, eager to shift attention away from his own life. Is running this place joy or satisfaction? Both, Maddie said without hesitation. It's hard work, and sometimes it's a struggle to make ends meet, especially in the off-season. But I love it. I love meeting new people, creating a space where they feel welcome and comfortable. I love the rhythm of the seasons here, the quiet winter mornings and the busy summer evenings. Her face was animated as she spoke, her hands gesturing to emphasize her points. Carter found himself captivated by her enthusiasm. It sounds like you found your calling, he said. I think I have, though my ex-fiancé didn't see it that way. A shadow crossed her face. He thought I was wasting my potential, hiding out in the middle of nowhere. Ex-fiancé, Carter couldn't help asking. Maddie nodded. Ryan. We were together through college and for a few years after. He's a corporate lawyer in Boston. When I decided to stay here and run the inn, he gave me an ultimatum: come back to the city with him or we were done. She shrugged. I chose the inn. That must have been a difficult choice. It was and it wasn't. I loved Ryan, but I think I was in love with the idea of what our life together would be, rather than what it actually was. We wanted different things. She brushed crumbs from her fingers. What about you? Anyone special waiting for your return to civilization? Carter shook his head. Not currently. My last relationship ended about a year ago. Let me guess, she said you work too much? Carter laughed despite himself. Something like that. She said I was emotionally unavailable and married to my company. Was she right? Probably, Carter admitted. Stephanie wanted someone who would be home for dinner every night, take vacations without bringing work along, start thinking about a family. I wasn't in that place. And now? Carter was saved from answering by the sound of footsteps. One of the other guests, an elderly woman, appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket. I smelled bread, she said hopefully. Maddie immediately stood and pulled out a chair for her. Mrs. Patterson, you should be resting. But since you're up, would you like some fresh bread and jam? As Maddie tended to Mrs. Patterson, Carter found himself watching her interactions with the older woman. The gentle way she helped her sit, the attentiveness to her needs, the genuine interest in her comfort. It was clear that for Maddie, this wasn't just a job, it was a calling. The conversation shifted to general topics as more guests began to stir. By 6 a.m., the kitchen was full of people, and Maddie was orchestrating a makeshift breakfast service with the help of Leo, who had appeared looking sleepy but willing. Carter found himself pressed into service, carrying trays of coffee to the dining room where people had gathered for warmth around the fireplace. By the time the weak winter sun began to lighten the sky, breakfast had been served to all 20 guests. Dishes had been washed by hand with water heated on the camping stove, and a sense of camaraderie had developed among the stranded travelers. Carter couldn't remember the last time he'd been part of a group effort like this, everyone pitching in to solve a common problem. When he finally had a moment alone with Maddie again, she was standing by the front window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. The storm had finally stopped, leaving behind a pristine white world. Snowdrifts reached halfway up the windows in places, and the road was completely buried. It's beautiful, Maddie said as he joined her. Destructive, but beautiful. Carter had to agree. The scene outside was like something from a Christmas card trees heavy with snow, the world transformed into something magical and quiet. "Thank you for your help this morning," Maddie said. "You're surprisingly good at carrying multiple coffee cups without spilling." "Hidden talent," Carter replied with a smile, "though I should be thanking you. If I hadn't found this place last night—" "You'd be a very stylish icicle in a very expensive car," Maddie finished for him, her eyes twinkling. Carter laughed, a genuine laugh that felt unfamiliar but good. "Exactly." "Well, you're welcome to stay as long as the storm keeps you here," Maddie said, "though fair warning, we might put you to work again." "I don't mind," Carter said, surprising himself with his sincerity. "It's been, refreshing." Maddie studied him for a moment, then nodded as if coming to a decision. "Since you're stuck here anyway, how would you like to see something special? A local secret?" Intrigued, Carter nodded. "Lead the way." "You'll need warmer clothes than that," Maddie said, gesturing to his cashmere sweater. "Wait here." She disappeared upstairs and returned a few minutes later with a heavy wool sweater, a puffy jacket, a knit hat, and insulated gloves. "These belonged to my brother before he grew out of them. They should fit you." Carter put on the borrowed clothes, immediately warmer than he'd been in his designer wear. Maddie donned her own winter gear, a red parka, black snow pants, and a rainbow-colored hat with a pom-pom on top. She looked ready for a day on the ski slopes. "Ready?" she asked, her cheeks already pink with excitement. They exited through the kitchen door into the backyard. The snow was deep almost to Carter's knees in places, but Maddie forged ahead confidently, creating a path for him to follow. They moved away from the inn, toward a line of pine trees at the edge of the property. "Where are we going?" Carter called, already slightly winded from the effort of walking through the heavy snow. "You'll see," Maddie called back. "Trust me, it's worth it." They entered the woods where the snow wasn't quite as deep thanks to the tree cover. A rough path seemed to exist, though it was hard to discern under the blanket of white. Maddie moved with the confidence of someone who knew the way by heart, occasionally pointing out landmarks, a distinctive tree, a boulder poking through the snow. After about 15 minutes of walking, the trees thinned, and they emerged onto a ridge overlooking a valley. The view was breathtaking: miles of untouched snow, mountains in the distance, a frozen stream winding through the valley below. The rising sun cast a pink-gold glow over everything, making the snow sparkle. "This is my thinking spot," Maddie said, slightly out of breath. "I come here when I need perspective." Carter stood beside her, taking in the vista. In all his travels to the world's most exclusive destinations, he'd never seen anything quite like this, perhaps because those destinations were always crowded with other people seeking the same experience. This view felt private, a secret shared between them and nature. "It's incredible," he said finally, inadequate words for what he was feeling. Maddie smiled, clearly pleased by his reaction. "I discovered it my first week back here. I was frustrated about something at the inn, a booking mishap, I think, and I just started walking to clear my head. Found this spot and sat here for hours. By the time I went back, my problem didn't seem so big anymore." "I can see why," Carter said. "Makes everything else seem small by comparison." They stood in companionable silence for several minutes, watching as the sun continued to rise, changing the quality of light on the snowy landscape. "Thank you for showing me this," Carter said finally. "It feels like a privilege." Maddie turned to look at him, studying his face as if searching for something. "You're not what I expected, Carter Quinn." "What did you expect?" "When I realized who you were, the Carter Quinn, tech billionaire, I expected someone more arrogant, demanding, full of his own importance," Carter supplied. Maddie laughed. "Maybe, but you've been helpful and kind. You carried coffee for Mrs. Patterson and listened to her story about her grandchildren without checking your phone once." "That's rare these days." "Well, my phone doesn't work here," Carter pointed out, "so I didn't have much choice." "Still," Maddie's expression grew more serious, "there's more to you than the business persona, I think. You should let that side out more often." Before Carter could respond, a distant rumble caught their attention. They turned to see a snowplow making its slow way down the main road in the valley below, its bright orange paint a vivid contrast against the white landscape. "Civilization returns," Maddie said, a hint of something like regret in her voice. "They'll get to the side roads by tomorrow, probably. You should be able to leave then." The thought of leaving, of returning to his regular life, created an unexpected pang in Carter's chest. The past 18 hours at Pineview Inn had been a revelation, a glimpse into a different way of living, a different way of being. "We should head back," Maddie said, turning away from the view. "There's a lot to do today, checking for any damage from the storm, keeping everyone comfortable until the power comes back on." The walk back seemed shorter, or perhaps Carter was simply lost in thought. By the time they reached the inn, his nose and cheeks were numb from the cold, but he felt invigorated. The inn was bustling with activity. Stan was on the roof clearing snow, Leo was shoveling the porch, and guests were helping where they could. "I should change and give you back these clothes," Carter said as they stamped snow from their boots at the kitchen door. "Keep them for now," Maddie said. "You'll need them if you want to help Leo clear the path to the parking area. Your fancy Italian shoes won't cut it." "How did you know they were Italian?" Carter asked, surprised. Maddie grinned. "I may live in the woods, but I do read fashion magazines occasionally. Besides, they had that look about them, expensive but impractical." "Like their owner?" Carter couldn't resist asking. Maddie's grin widened. "I didn't say that," but she didn't deny it either. The day passed in a blur of activity. Without power, the inn reverted to simpler times: board games by firelight, books read in patches of sunlight from the windows, conversations with strangers who quickly became friends through shared circumstances. Carter found himself drawn into a fierce Monopoly competition with a family from New Hampshire, discovered a shared interest in mystery novels with Mrs. Patterson, and spent 2 hours helping Leo and Stan clear snow from the inn's various walkways and entrances. By late afternoon, exhausted but oddly content, Carter found himself in the kitchen again. Maddie was preparing dinner, a hearty soup made from leftover stew and additional vegetables, cooked on the camping stove. "Need any help?" he offered, leaning against the counter. Maddie handed him a cutting board and a knife. "Chop these carrots, if you don't mind." Carter took the vegetables, suddenly aware that he couldn't remember the last time he'd prepared food. His apartment came with a personal chef service, and when he didn't use that, he ordered in or ate at restaurants. "Like this?" he asked, making an experimental cut. Maddie glanced over. "Smaller pieces and try to make them even so they cook at the same rate." Carter adjusted his technique, concentrating on the task. There was something soothing about the repetitive motion, the solid feel of the knife in his hand, the simple transformation of whole vegetables into neat pieces. "You're a quick learner," Maddie commented, stirring the pot. "Ever think about a career change? We could use a sous chef around here." Carter smiled at the thought. "I think my board of directors might have something to say about that." "Probably." Maddie added the carrots he'd chopped to the pot. "Though I bet you'd sleep better after a day of physical work than after a day of meetings." She wasn't wrong. Despite the uncomfortable bed and the pre-dawn wake-up call, Carter felt better rested than he had in months. The fresh air and physical labor had given him a different kind of tired, a good tired, one that came from using his body rather than just his mind. "Maybe I missed my calling," he joked. "Maybe you did," Maddie said, but her tone suggested she wasn't entirely joking. "Everyone has multiple potentials, multiple paths they could take. Some people just get locked into one early and never explore the others." "Is that what happened to you with marketing in Boston?" Carter asked. Maddie nodded. "I was good at it, moving up quickly, but it never felt quite right, like I was playing a part in someone else's play." Carter knew exactly what she meant. How often had he felt that way at board meetings or investor presentations, like he was performing the role of CEO rather than simply being himself. "Anyway," Maddie continued, "life has a way of course correcting sometimes, bringing you where you need to be, even if it's not where you thought you'd go." "Is that why I ended up in a snowdrift outside your inn?" Carter asked, only half joking. Maddie gave him a mysterious smile. "Who knows? Maybe the universe thought you needed a reminder of what life looks like without Wi-Fi." Before Carter could respond, Leo burst into the kitchen, his face flushed with excitement. The power's back on. Just came on a minute ago. Maddie's face lit up. That's amazing. I thought it would be days. Go switch off the generator and I'll get the heat turned up. As Leo rushed off, Carter felt an odd mixture of relief and disappointment. With power restored, normal life would resume. Phones would work again. The outside world would intrude on this strange, peaceful interlude. Well, Maddie said, turning to him, looks like civilization has returned earlier than expected. You might be able to leave tomorrow after all, once the side roads are plowed. Right, Carter said, trying to match her cheerful tone. That's good news. For the rest of the evening, the inn buzzed with renewed energy. Lights came on, phones were charged, Wi-Fi was restored. Carter found himself in his room, catching up on the hundreds of emails that had accumulated during his offline hours. Sophie had rescheduled his meetings, informed the board of his situation, and handled several minor crises that had arisen in his absence. All was well in the world of Quinn Technologies. So why did he feel so unsettled? Around midnight, having finally cleared his inbox, Carter lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep, which had come so easily the night before, now eluded him. His mind kept replaying moments from the past day and a half, Maddie's smile as she served bread and jam at 4 a.m., the view from the ridge, the satisfaction of helping clear snow from the paths. Finally giving up on sleep, Carter pulled on jeans and a sweater and made his way downstairs. The inn was quiet, most guests having retired to their now heated rooms. A light still glowed from the kitchen, drawing Carter toward it like a moth to flame. Maddie sat at the kitchen table, a mug of tea in her hands, staring thoughtfully into space. She wore flannel pajama pants and an oversized sweater again, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Can't sleep?" she asked without looking up, somehow aware of his presence. "Too many emails," Carter said, entering the kitchen. "Mind if I join you?" Maddie gestured to the chair across from her. "Help yourself to tea. Kettle's still hot." Carter made himself a cup and sat down. "Why are you awake? Long day for you too." "Just thinking," Maddie said. "The storm brought in enough revenue to cover this month's expenses, which is a relief. December is usually slow until the holiday week." "Financial concerns?" Carter asked, picking up on the underlying worry in her tone. Maddie hesitated, then nodded. "The inn does okay in summer and during ski season, but the shoulder seasons are tough. My grandparents owned the place outright, but there are still taxes, insurance, maintenance costs, staff salaries. Have you considered modernizing, appealing to a different clientele? Like installing Tesla charging stations and Wi-Fi boosters?" Maddie asked with a wry smile. "Yes, I've considered it, but renovations cost money I don't have, and taking out a loan feels too risky with the inconsistent income." Carter nodded, understanding the dilemma. It was a classic small business problem, needing capital to grow, but not having enough stable revenue to secure that capital. "What would you do if money wasn't an issue?" he asked. Maddie's eyes lit up. "I'd update the heating system first. It's ancient and inefficient. Then the bathrooms, they're clean but outdated. Install better Wi-Fi, maybe add a small spa area with a hot tub and sauna for winter guests." Her hands moved animatedly as she spoke. "Update the kitchen equipment, expand the dining room a bit, maybe add a small barn for events like weddings and retreats." "You've thought about this a lot," Carter observed. "I have a whole business plan written up," Maddie admitted, "complete with projected costs and revenue forecasts. I worked on it during my first year here, but then reality set in. Banks aren't eager to loan to small inns in the middle of nowhere, especially with the seasonal income fluctuations." Carter sipped his tea, an idea forming in his mind. "Would you show me? The business plan, I mean." Maddie looked surprised. "Why? Planning a career change from tech to hospitality?" "Professional curiosity," Carter said. "I've invested in a few hospitality ventures over the years." It wasn't entirely a lie. Quinn Ventures, his investment arm, had stakes in several luxury hotel chains. But his interest in Pineview Inn's business plan had little to do with professional curiosity and much more to do with the woman sitting across from him. Maddie studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, but no laughing at my amateur financial projections." She left the kitchen and returned a few minutes later with a thick binder. Here it is, my grand vision for Pineview 2.0. Carter accepted the binder and opened it. The plan was surprisingly comprehensive: market analysis, competitive landscape, detailed renovation plans with cost estimates, marketing strategies, revenue projections. It was clear that Maddie had put her marketing background to good use. "This is impressive," he said honestly, flipping through the pages. "You've done your homework?" "Thanks," Maddie said, a hint of pride in her voice. "Like I said, I worked on it my first year here, before I understood just how hard it would be to secure funding." Carter continued reading, asking occasional questions about specific details. Maddie answered each one thoughtfully, showing a clear grasp of both the business challenges and opportunities facing the inn. "The event space is particularly interesting," Carter noted. "There's definitely a market for destination weddings in settings like this." "That's what I thought too," Maddie said eagerly. "We already get inquiries, but we don't have the facilities to accommodate them properly. With a barn conversion and some landscape improvements, we could host weddings from May through October." They talked for over an hour, dissecting the business plan point by point. Carter found himself impressed not just with the thoroughness of the plan, but with Maddie's obvious passion and business acumen. She wasn't just a hospitable innkeeper, she was a savvy entrepreneur who understood both the operational and strategic aspects of her business. As the clock approached 2 a.m., Carter closed the binder. "I think you've got something special here, Maddie, both in the inn itself and in your vision for its future." "Thank you," Maddie said, looking genuinely touched by his assessment. "That means a lot, especially coming from someone with your business experience." "I'd like to help," Carter said, the words coming out before he'd fully formed the thought. Maddie's expression turned wary. "Help how?" "I could invest in your renovation plans," Carter said, the idea crystallizing as he spoke. "Not as a loan, but as a silent partner. Capital in exchange for a minority equity stake." Maddie stared at him, clearly caught off guard. "Carter, that's a very generous offer, but we've known each other for less than 2 days. And while my business plan looks good on paper, there's no guarantee it would succeed in reality." "I've made investment decisions on less information," Carter said honestly, "and with less potential upside." "But why?" Maddie asked, genuinely puzzled. "What's in it for you?" "The return on investment would be modest at best, especially compared to what you're probably used to in tech." Carter couldn't easily answer that question, not without revealing feelings he was just beginning to understand himself. How could he explain that in less than 48 hours, Maddie and Pineview Inn had awakened something in him that had been dormant for years? A sense of purpose beyond profit margins, a connection to something authentic and meaningful. "Let's just say I believe in your vision," he said finally, "and I'd like to be part of making it happen. Think about it. No pressure, no deadline." "The offer stands regardless." Maddie nodded slowly. "I will think about it. Thank you." An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by the tick of the old clock on the kitchen wall. "I should get some sleep," Maddie said finally, standing up. "And you should too. The plow will probably reach our road by mid-morning, and you'll be able to get back to your real life." My real life. The phrase echoed in Carter's mind as he watched Maddie leave the kitchen, taking her business plan with her. Was his life in Manhattan, with its endless meetings and acquisitions and stock prices, more real than these past 2 days at Pineview? It certainly didn't feel that way at the moment. The next morning, Carter woke to the sound of engines outside his window. A snowplow was making its way up the inn's driveway, clearing a path to the parking area where his Tesla sat under a thick blanket of snow. The sight brought mixed emotions: relief at the prospect of returning to his normal routine, but also a surprising reluctance to leave this unexpected haven. After showering and dressing, Carter packed his overnight bag and headed downstairs. The lobby was bustling with other guests also preparing to depart, checking out and exchanging contact information with new friends made during their shared adventure. Maddie stood behind the reception desk, handling checkouts with efficient grace. She looked tired but happy, her hair pulled back in its usual messy bun, wearing a different Pineview Inn sweater, this one blue instead of green. When it was Carter's turn, he approached the desk with an odd feeling of finality. "Checking out, I guess?" Maddie smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "All set. And since the credit card machine is working again, I can actually charge you for your stay." "Right," Carter said, handing over his black card. "Though considering all the manual labor I did, maybe I should get a discount." "Consider the coffee and bread service at 4 a.m. your employee benefit," Maddie quipped, running his card. "Though you were actually very helpful. You're welcome back anytime, storm or no storm." Carter signed the receipt she presented, then hesitated before handing it back. "About my offer last night." "I'm still thinking about it," Maddie said quickly. "It's a big decision." "Of course," Carter agreed. "Take all the time you need." He pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote his personal cell number on the back. "This is my direct line. Call any time." Maddie accepted the card, studying it for a moment before tucking it into her pocket. "Thank you, Carter, for everything." "Thank you," Carter replied. "This unexpected detour turned out to be exactly what I needed, I think." They looked at each other for a long moment, so much left unsaid between them. Carter felt an almost overwhelming urge to stay, to help serve breakfast or chop more firewood or do whatever else needed doing. But the real world was calling, his responsibilities waiting. "Well," he said finally, "goodbye, Maddie." "Goodbye, Carter," she replied softly. "Drive safely." With a final nod, Carter turned and walked out of the inn into the bright winter morning. The air was crisp and clean, the world sparkling with fresh snow. His Tesla had been cleared off, presumably by Leo or Stan, and sat ready for departure. Carter stowed his bag in the trunk and slid into the driver's seat, the familiar luxury enveloping him once more. As he started the car and began the careful drive down the freshly plowed driveway, Carter glanced in his rearview mirror. Maddie stood on the porch, watching him go, her hand raised in a small wave. Carter felt a tightness in his chest that he couldn't quite identify. 3 weeks later, Carter sat in his Manhattan office, staring at quarterly reports without really seeing them. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled beneath a gray December sky, holiday lights twinkling in the early dusk. His office was impeccably designed, sleek, modern, impressive, everything a billionaire CEO's office should be. And yet, since returning from Vermont, it had felt strangely empty, hollow somehow, like a stage set rather than a place where real life happened. Carter had thrown himself back into work immediately upon his return, catching up on missed meetings, finalizing the Westfield acquisition, preparing for the board meeting. On the surface, everything had returned to normal, but underneath, something had shifted. The drive that had propelled him for years now felt mechanical rather than passionate. The satisfaction of closing deals and watching stock prices rise felt muted compared to the simple pleasure of chopping vegetables for soup or clearing snow from a path. And then there was Maddie. He'd thought about her every day since leaving Pineview, her directness, her passion for her work, her ability to find joy in simple things. He'd checked his phone countless times, hoping to see her number, but no call had come. He'd drafted several emails to her but deleted them all, unsure of what to say that wouldn't sound like a billionaire trying to buy his way into her life. A knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. Sophie, his assistant, entered with a stack of mail. "These need signatures," she said, placing several folders on his desk. "And these came for you personally." She handed him a small pile of envelopes. Carter nodded his thanks and began sifting through the personal mail, mostly invitations to holiday parties and charity galas. Near the bottom of the stack, a cream-colored envelope caught his attention. His name and office address were handwritten in an elegant script he didn't recognize. No return address. Curious, Carter opened it. Inside was a Christmas card, not a corporate one, but a simple scene of a snow-covered inn with lights glowing in the windows. Pineview Inn, unmistakably. Carter opened the card, his heart rate quickening. "Dear Carter," it read, "thank you again for your help during the storm. The inn isn't the same without our resident billionaire sous chef. I've been thinking about your offer. If it still stands, I'd like to discuss it further. Merry Christmas, Maddie." Below her name was a phone number, her personal cell, he assumed. Carter stared at the card for a long moment, a slow smile spreading across his face. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. Maddie answered on the third ring. "Hello?" "It's Carter," he said, suddenly feeling like a teenager calling his crush. "I got your card." "Oh, hi." She sounded genuinely pleased to hear from him. "I wasn't sure if it would reach you with all the holiday mail." "It did," Carter confirmed. "And yes, the offer still stands. Absolutely." "Great," Maddie said. "I've refined some aspects of the business plan since you saw it, made the projections more conservative, added some contingency planning." "I'd love to see the updates," Carter said. "Maybe in person. I could come up to Vermont again." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Actually," Maddie said finally, "I'm going to be in New York next week. My friend is getting married on Saturday, and I'll be there from Thursday through Sunday." Carter's pulse quickened. "That's perfect. We could meet for dinner or lunch, whatever works with your schedule." They arranged to meet for dinner on Thursday evening at a restaurant Carter knew upscale but not pretentious, with private tables where they could talk business without interruption. After hanging up, Carter sat back in his chair, feeling more energized than he had in weeks. Sophie reappeared in his doorway. "The board members are gathering for the 4 o'clock call. Do you need anything before joining?" "Actually," Carter said, making a sudden decision, "please reschedule the call for tomorrow and clear my schedule for next Thursday through Monday." Sophie raised an eyebrow, but made notes on her tablet without comment. She'd been with Carter long enough to know when a decision was final. "Is there anything else I should know?" she asked. Carter considered the question. "Yes," he said after a moment. "I think I'm making some changes. Good ones. I'll fill you in as they develop." The following Thursday, Carter found himself checking his watch every few minutes as the day crawled by. He'd moved his last meeting up to end by 4 p.m., giving himself plenty of time to go home and change before meeting Maddie for dinner at 7:30. At his penthouse apartment, Carter stood in front of his closet, deliberating longer than usual over what to wear. He finally settled on dark jeans, a light blue button-down shirt, and a charcoal blazer, professional but not overly formal. As he dressed, he realized he was nervous. A sensation he rarely experienced these days, certainly not over a business dinner. But this wasn't just business, was it? The investment opportunity was real, but it wasn't the only reason, or even the primary reason, he was looking forward to seeing Maddie again. Carter arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early and was shown to a quiet table in the back. He ordered a bottle of wine, a Willamette Valley Pinot Noir he thought Maddie might appreciate, and waited, trying not to check his watch or the door, too obviously. At exactly 7:30, Maddie arrived. Carter stood as the hostess led her to the table, momentarily speechless. She looked beautiful in a simple burgundy dress, her usually pulled-back hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She'd applied minimal makeup, just enough to enhance her natural features. "Hi," she said, smiling a bit shyly as she reached the table. "Sorry if I'm overdressed. My friend insisted on taking me shopping this afternoon. Apparently my Vermont wardrobe wasn't up to New York standards." "You look perfect," Carter said honestly, finding his voice. He held out her chair. "I'm glad you made it safely." "The train was actually on time for once," Maddie said, sitting down. "Though I'd forgotten how overwhelming the city can be. So many people, so much noise." "You get used to it," Carter said, resuming his seat across from her. "Or you learn to tune it out at least." "I don't think I ever fully did, even when I lived in Boston," Maddie admitted. "I always felt a bit overstimulated in the city." The waiter arrived to pour the wine, giving them a moment to settle into the conversation. After they'd ordered their meals, Carter steered the topic to business. "So tell me about the updates to your business plan," he prompted. Maddie reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. "It's all on here. I've tightened up the revenue projections based on more detailed market research, and I've prioritized the renovations into phases to manage cash flow better." Carter accepted the drive, impressed by her thoroughness. "I'll look it over this weekend, but give me the highlights now." For the next half hour, Maddie outlined her revised plans for Pineview Inn. She spoke with confidence and clarity, showing both a solid grasp of the numbers and a compelling vision for the future. Carter found himself as impressed with her business acumen as he was charmed by her passion. The bottom line, Maddie concluded, is that with the right investment, I believe Pineview can become a premier destination in the region, not by becoming something it's not, but by enhancing what it already is, an authentic, welcoming retreat from the modern world. I agree, Carter said simply, and I want to be part of making that happen. Relief and joy flashed across Maddie's face. Really? Even after looking at my revised numbers? They're less optimistic than what I showed you before. They're more realistic, Carter corrected, which makes me more confident, not less. I appreciate honesty over hype. Their meals arrived, temporarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, the discussion shifted to more personal topics: Carter's recent projects, Maddie's preparations for her friend's wedding, the record snowfall Vermont had experienced since their first meeting. "How's Mrs. Patterson?" Carter asked, remembering the elderly guest from the storm. "And Leo and Stan?" Maddie's face lit up at his remembrance of the inn's staff and guests. "Mrs. Patterson is great. She actually came back last weekend with her daughter's family. Leo is applying to colleges for next fall. He wants to study hospitality management. And Stan is Stan, still fixing everything that breaks and complaining the whole time." "Sounds like they're all doing well," Carter said, enjoying the warmth in her voice as she spoke about them. "They are," Maddie confirmed. "They all asked about you, by the way. You made quite an impression." "Did I?" Carter asked, genuinely surprised. Maddie nodded. "Mrs. Patterson said you were a real gentleman, not at all what you'd expect from one of those tech billionaires. Stan was impressed by your snow shoveling technique, and Leo thinks you're actually pretty cool for an old guy." Carter laughed. "I'm 32. That's not old." "To an 18-year-old? Ancient," Maddie teased. The evening passed quickly, conversation flowing easily between business discussions and personal anecdotes. Before Carter knew it, they were finishing dessert and coffee, the restaurant having emptied around them without his noticing. "I should let you get back to your friend," Carter said reluctantly, noticing the time. "It's getting late." "She's actually at her bachelorette party tonight," Maddie said. "I begged off, claiming exhaustion from travel. Truth is, clubs and male strippers aren't really my scene." "Mine either," Carter said with mock seriousness, drawing a laugh from Maddie. "Can I offer you a ride back to your hotel?" "That would be great, thanks," Maddie accepted. Outside, Carter's driver waited with the car. As they settled into the back seat, Carter found himself hyper-aware of Maddie beside him, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way the passing streetlights illuminated her profile. "This is a bit different from your Tesla," Maddie observed, running her hand over the luxury car's leather seat. "Company car," Carter explained. "For city use. I only drive myself when I'm out of town." "Like when you're getting lost in snowstorms in Vermont?" Maddie asked with a smile. "Exactly like that," Carter agreed, "though I'm starting to think getting lost was the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." The words hung between them, more revealing than he'd intended. Maddie turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. "Carter," she began, then hesitated. "I need to be clear about something. I'm extremely grateful for your interest in investing in Pineview. It's a tremendous opportunity for the inn. But I don't want you to think that my interest in the partnership is anything but professional." Carter felt a pang of disappointment, but appreciated her directness. "I understand," he said carefully, "and I want to assure you that my investment offer stands regardless of anything else. It's a good business decision, full stop." Maddie studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good. I just didn't want there to be any confusion." "No confusion," Carter confirmed, although inwardly he felt plenty confused about his own feelings. They arrived at Maddie's hotel, a mid-range place in Midtown. Carter walked her to the lobby where they stopped to say goodnight. "Thank you for dinner," Maddie said, "and for still being interested in the investment after all this time." "Thank you for the best bread and jam I've ever had at 4 a.m., Carter replied, drawing a smile from her. "I'll review your updated plan this weekend and have my team draft an investment agreement. No pressure, though. Take all the time you need to review it once it's ready. I will, Maddie promised. She hesitated, then stepped forward and gave him a quick hug. Good night, Carter. Good night, Maddie, he replied, watching as she walked to the elevators and disappeared inside. The weekend passed in a blur for Carter. He reviewed Maddie's business plan thoroughly, impressed by her revisions and attention to detail. He had his legal team draft a straightforward investment agreement, fair terms, a minority stake as promised, with provisions that protected both his investment and Maddie's control of day-to-day operations. On Saturday evening, while Maddie was at her friend's wedding, Carter found himself restless in his penthouse. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights, Manhattan spread out beneath him like a glittering carpet. His phone rang Sophie, calling about a Monday morning meeting preparation. He answered and handled the question efficiently, then hesitated before ending the call. Sophie, he said, are you happy? The question was so out of character that Sophie was momentarily silent. Sir? In your life, Carter clarified. Are you happy with your life? The balance of it? Sophie, ever professional, considered the question seriously. I think so, yes. I find my work challenging and meaningful. I have time for my family and friends. I feel purposeful, I suppose. Purposeful, Carter repeated. That's a good word. May I ask why you're asking, sir? Carter sighed. I'm not sure I can say the same lately. About feeling purposeful, I mean. Or balanced. I see, Sophie said carefully. Is there something I can do to help? Actually, yes, Carter decided. Please clear my schedule for next week as much as possible. Reschedule anything that isn't urgent. And look into what it would take for me to work remotely for a while. A few weeks, maybe. Of course, Sophie said, taking the unusual request in stride. Any particular location I should consider for the remote work arrangements? Vermont, Carter said, a small town called Maple Ridge. There's an inn there called Pineview. Sunday evening, Carter met Maddie for coffee before her train back to Vermont. He presented her with the investment agreement, explaining each section clearly. This looks very fair, Maddie said, scanning the document. More than fair, actually. Are you sure about the terms? This gives you very little control for the size of the investment. I'm sure, Carter said. I believe in your vision and your ability to execute it. I don't need to micromanage. Maddie closed the folder containing the agreement. I'll have my lawyer review it, but assuming everything checks out, I'm inclined to accept. Excellent, Carter said, feeling a surge of satisfaction. There's one more thing I wanted to discuss. Oh? Maddie looked curious. I'd like to come up to Pineview next week, Carter said, to see the property again, get a better feel for the renovation potential. Maybe stay for a bit while we work out the implementation details of the first phase. How long is a bit? Maddie asked, eyebrows raised. A few weeks, maybe, Carter admitted. I've been thinking about what you said, about joy versus satisfaction. I think I need a break from my normal routine, a chance to reassess some things. Maddie studied him, her expression unreadable. And you want to do this reassessment at my inn? If that's okay, Carter said, I'll pay full rate for the room, of course, and I won't get in the way of your normal operations. Carter, Maddie said gently, are you having some kind of midlife crisis? Carter laughed. I'm 32. Isn't that a bit young for a midlife crisis? Maybe an early onset case, Maddie suggested with a small smile. It's just, this seems sudden, and I'm not sure Pineview is the right place for whatever you're working through. Why not? Carter challenged. It's peaceful, beautiful, no distractions. And I already know I enjoy the company. A faint blush colored Maddie's cheeks at his last comment. I just don't want you to be disappointed. Day-to-day life at the inn isn't all magical snowstorms and fireside chats. It's a lot of mundane work, dealing with plumbing issues and guest complaints and ordering supplies. I understand that, Carter assured her. I'm not expecting a Hallmark movie. I just want some time away from my normal context, a chance to think clearly without the usual pressures. Maddie considered this, then nodded slowly. All right, room 5 will be available. But I'm putting you to work, no free rides just because you're an investor. I wouldn't have it any other way, Carter said with a grin. 2 days later, Carter arrived at Pineview Inn, this time under clear blue skies. The snow from the storm had been joined by fresh powder, creating a winter wonderland effect around the property. Christmas decorations adorned the porch and windows, making the inn look even more inviting than he remembered. Inside, the lobby was busy with guests checking in and out, the atmosphere festive with holiday music playing softly and the scent of mulled cider in the air. Maddie stood behind the reception desk, efficiently handling a family's check in process. She looked up as Carter entered, surprise momentarily flashing across her face as if she hadn't quite believed he would actually show up. "Welcome back," she said when he approached the desk. "Room 5 is ready for you, as promised." "Thank you," Carter said, accepting the key, the same old-fashioned metal one from before. "It's good to be back." And surprisingly, it was. Despite the luxury of his Manhattan penthouse, despite the conveniences of city life, despite all the logical reasons why a small, rustic inn in rural Vermont should feel like a step down, Carter felt a sense of homecoming as he carried his bags up the creaking stairs to room 5. The next few days fell into a rhythm that felt both novel and oddly natural. Carter spent mornings helping with whatever tasks needed doing, fixing a loose handrail, assisting Leo with the breakfast service, even learning how to properly split firewood under Stan's gruff tutelage. Afternoons were dedicated to working remotely, handling the most essential aspects of his business via his laptop and the inn's now functioning Wi-Fi. Evenings were Carter's favorite part of the day. After dinner service ended, he and Maddie would often sit in the kitchen or by the lobby fireplace, discussing renovation plans for the inn, sharing stories from their respective lives, or simply enjoying comfortable silence in each other's company. 5 days into his stay, they were sitting at the kitchen table late one evening, going over contractor bids for the bathroom renovations, when Maddie suddenly set down her pen and looked at him directly. "Why are you really here, Carter?" she asked. "And don't say it's about the investment. You could have handled everything remotely." Carter considered deflecting, but found he didn't want to. Not with her. "I think I'm here because this place and you made me question things I hadn't questioned in a long time. About what I want, what matters, how I want to live. That's a lot of responsibility to put on a chance meeting in a snowstorm," Maddie said, though her tone was gentle. "It's not just the meeting," Carter clarified. "It's what happened after, the way everyone pulled together during the power outage, the sense of community, the simple pleasures of good food and conversation without distractions, the way you approach your work with passion and purpose, not just for the financial return." Maddie was quiet for a moment, processing his words. "And you don't have that in your regular life?" "I have success," Carter said, "achievement, recognition, but purpose, joy, those have been in shorter supply lately." "So what are you going to do about it?" Maddie asked. "You can't stay at Pineview forever, hiding from your real life." "I'm not hiding," Carter protested, though part of him wondered if that's exactly what he was doing. "I'm reassessing, trying to figure out how to incorporate more of what matters into my day-to-day existence." "And what matters?" Maddie pressed. "What did you find here that you're missing there?" Carter met her gaze directly. "Connection," he said simply. "Authentic connection. To people, to work that feels meaningful, to a sense of place and purpose. Those things exist in New York too," Maddie pointed out. "You just have to prioritize them." "I know," Carter acknowledged. "That's part of what I'm figuring out, how to restructure my life to make room for what matters most." Maddie nodded, seeming satisfied with his answer. "For what it's worth, I think you're asking the right questions. Most people never do." Their conversation shifted back to the renovation plans, but Carter felt something had changed between them, a deeper understanding, perhaps, or a new level of trust. The days turned into weeks. Christmas came and went, a festive affair at the inn with a big dinner for guests and staff alike. Carter found himself swept into the celebration, pulling crackers with Mrs. Patterson, who had returned for the holiday, helping Leo hang last-minute decorations, even donning a Santa hat to distribute small gifts Maddie had prepared for each guest. By New Year's Eve, Carter had been at Pineview for nearly 3 weeks. The first phase of renovations was scheduled to begin in mid-January, updating the bathrooms and heating system, followed by technology upgrades including better Wi-Fi and a proper website with online booking capabilities. The inn was fully booked for New Year's, a special dinner planned, followed by a modest party in the lobby. Carter had offered to help in the kitchen, his chopping skills having improved considerably under Maddie's tutelage. "Finer dice on those shallots," Maddie instructed, checking his work over his shoulder. "We want them to melt into the sauce." Carter adjusted his technique, enjoying the simple focus the task required. "Better?" "Much," Maddie approved. She moved on to check the roasting rack of lamb, the centerpiece of the evening's meal. They worked side by side in comfortable companionship, the kitchen warm and fragrant with holiday cooking. Carter found himself stealing glances at Maddie when she wasn't looking, the concentration on her face as she adjusted seasoning, the confident way she moved between tasks, the occasional smile of satisfaction when something turned out just right. He'd been careful to maintain professional boundaries since arriving, respecting her earlier clarification about their relationship. But his feelings had only grown stronger over the weeks they'd spent working together. Maddie Vega was unlike anyone he'd ever met, grounded, yet ambitious, practical, yet passionate, completely herself without apology or pretense. As they put the finishing touches on the dinner preparation, Maddie glanced at the clock. "We should get changed before service starts. 30 minutes enough time?" Carter nodded. "More than enough." In his room, Carter changed into the suit he'd brought for the occasion, charcoal gray, with a dark green tie that matched the season. He'd trimmed his beard that morning and gotten a haircut in the nearby town the previous day. Looking in the mirror, he hardly recognized himself. There was a healthy color to his face from time spent outdoors, and the perpetual tension he used to carry in his shoulders had eased. When he came back downstairs, the dining room had been transformed. White tablecloths covered the usual checked ones, candles flickered in the center of each table, and a fire roared in the stone fireplace. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, one of the small technology upgrades Maddie had already implemented. Guests were beginning to arrive, dressed in their holiday best. Carter took up his position at the entrance, greeting people and showing them to their assigned tables as they arrived. It was a role he'd volunteered for, enjoying the chance to make each guest feel personally welcomed. When Maddie emerged from the kitchen, Carter momentarily lost track of what he was saying to the couple he was seating. She wore a simple but elegant dark red dress that complemented her coloring perfectly, her hair swept up in a style more sophisticated than her usual casual bun. She caught his eye across the room and smiled, a brief private expression before turning her attention to the guests. The evening progressed smoothly. Dinner service went without a hitch. The food was excellent, and the atmosphere festive but elegant. As midnight approached, guests migrated to the lobby where champagne was being served for the countdown. Carter found himself standing next to Maddie as the final minute of the year ticked away. Guests counted down enthusiastically, glasses raised in anticipation. 10, 9, 8. "Quite a year," Carter said quietly, just for Maddie's ears. 7, 6, 5. "It's ending better than I expected," Maddie replied, looking up at him with a smile. 4, 3, 2. "Here's to new beginnings," Carter said, raising his glass slightly. 1. Happy New Year! The room erupted in cheers. Couples kissed, friends hugged, everyone toasted the arrival of the new year. In the midst of the celebration, Carter and Maddie stood looking at each other, something unspoken passing between them. "Happy New Year, Maddie," Carter said softly. "Happy New Year, Carter," she replied. Then, rising on tiptoe, she pressed a quick, soft kiss to his cheek before turning to toast with a nearby guest. The moment was brief, but its impact lingered. As the celebration continued around them, Carter felt a certainty settling in his heart. The clarity he'd been seeking when he came to Pineview had arrived, not in a flash of insight, but in the gradual accumulation of moments like this, moments of connection, purpose, and quiet joy. The next morning, while the inn was still quiet with most guests sleeping late after the festivities, Carter found Maddie in the kitchen starting preparations for the New Year's Day brunch. She looked up as he entered, a flicker of shyness crossing her face, the first he'd seen from her. "Good morning," she said. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." "Thanks," Carter said, helping himself to a mug. "Need any help with brunch prep?" "I've got it under control," Maddie assured him. "You should enjoy your day off. You've been working hard since you arrived." Carter leaned against the counter, watching her efficient movements as she mixed batter for what looked like blueberry pancakes. "I've been thinking," he said finally. "Dangerous pastime," Maddie quipped, glancing up with a smile. "It can be," Carter agreed, "especially when it leads to life-changing decisions." That caught her attention. Maddie set down her whisk and gave him her full focus. "What kind of life-changing decisions?" "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations at Quinn Technologies," Carter said. "Not completely, I'll still be involved in major decisions and strategy. But I'm promoting my COO to handle the operational side. I'll be more of an executive chairman than a hands-on CEO." Maddie's eyes widened. "That's significant. Are you sure?" Carter nodded. "I've been thinking about it for months, actually, before I ever ended up here. The storm and everything after just clarified things for me." "What will you do with your newfound time?" Maddie asked. "Golf? Yacht racing? Whatever billionaires do when they're semi-retired?" Carter smiled at her teasing. "Actually, I was thinking of spending more time in Vermont," Maddie stilled. "Vermont. There's an inn I know," Carter continued, taking a step closer to her. "Beautiful place, excellent bread and jam. The innkeeper is pretty special, too." "Carter," Maddie began, her voice cautious, "if this is about the investment—" "It's not," he interrupted gently. "Not primarily, anyway. The investment makes good business sense, and I stand by it completely. But this," he gestured between them, "this is something else entirely." "What is it, then?" Maddie asked, her expression a mix of hope and uncertainty. Carter took a deep breath. "I think it might be the beginning of the joy I've been missing. If you're interested in exploring that possibility." Maddie was quiet for a long moment, studying his face as if searching for something. "I told myself not to get attached," she said finally, "that you were just passing through, that your real life was elsewhere." "My life is wherever I choose to build it," Carter said, "and I've never felt more alive, more myself, than I have these past few weeks with you." "What are you suggesting exactly?" Maddie asked. "A long-distance relationship? Weekends in Vermont?" "For starters," Carter said, "with the operational changes at Quinn, I can work from anywhere much of the time. I could be here half the month easily." "And the other half?" "You could visit New York," Carter suggested. "See if the city is more appealing with the right tour guide." A smile tugged at the corner of Maddie's mouth. "That's a pretty complicated arrangement." "Life is complicated," Carter acknowledged, "but some things are worth the complexity." He took another step closer, close enough now that he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "What do you think? Worth a try?" Instead of answering with words, Maddie closed the remaining distance between them. Her kiss was tentative at first, then more confident as Carter responded, his arms encircling her waist to draw her closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both slightly breathless. "I think that's a yes," Carter murmured, resting his forehead against hers. Maddie laughed softly. "Yes, it's worth a try. But we take it slow, okay? I've built a life here that I love. I'm not looking to upend everything overnight." "Slow is good," Carter agreed. "We've got time to figure it out." The sound of footsteps in the hallway reminded them they weren't alone in the inn. Maddie stepped back, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "I should finish this batter before guests start arriving for brunch." "And I should let you work," Carter said, though he was reluctant to end the moment. "Dinner tonight? Just the two of us after service ends?" Maddie nodded. "I'd like that." As Carter turned to leave the kitchen, Maddie called after him. "Carter?" He paused, looking back. "Yes?" "I'm glad you got lost in that snowstorm," she said with a smile that warmed him more than any fire could. "Best wrong turn I ever took," Carter replied honestly. 1 year later, Pineview Inn was transformed. The renovations had been completed in phases throughout the year, each one enhancing the inn's charm while adding modern amenities that guests appreciated. The bathrooms now featured luxury fixtures and heated floors. The dining room had been expanded to accommodate more guests. A small spa area with a hot tub and sauna had been added in what was once unused storage space. And most significantly, a beautiful timber frame barn had been constructed on the property, designed specifically for hosting weddings and events. Business was booming. The inn had been featured in several travel magazines, highlighted as a perfect blend of rustic charm and modern luxury. Weekends were booked solid months in advance, and even weekdays saw healthy occupancy rates. Maddie had hired additional staff, including a full-time chef, to help with the expanded food service. Carter's investment had paid off financially, but the true return had been much more valuable. The past year had been one of growth and discovery for both him and Maddie as they navigated their evolving relationship alongside their business partnership. As promised, Carter had restructured his role at Quinn Technologies, allowing him to spend roughly half of each month at Pineview. He'd converted one of the inn's smaller outbuildings into a home office, equipped with everything he needed to stay connected to his company while maintaining the peaceful separation he'd come to value. Maddie, too, had found a new balance. With additional staff handling more of the day-to-day operations, she was able to focus on strategic growth and the guest experience, the aspects of innkeeping she enjoyed most. She'd also begun spending time in New York, discovering that the city could indeed be enjoyable with the right companion. On the anniversary of the snowstorm that had brought them together, Carter and Maddie stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, her thinking spot. The view was as breathtaking as Carter remembered, though this time the sky was clear, the winter sun casting long shadows across the untouched snow. "Hard to believe it's been a year," Maddie said, her arm linked through Carter's as they admired the view. "So much has changed." "For the better, I hope?" Carter asked, looking down at her. Maddie nodded, her face alight with contentment. "Definitely for the better. The inn is thriving. We've already got 20 weddings booked for next season, and I haven't had to fix a toilet myself in months." Carter laughed. "When you put it that way, it sounds idyllic." "It's not perfect," Maddie acknowledged. "Running a business never is, but it's pretty close." They stood in companionable silence for a few moments, watching the sun begin its early winter descent toward the horizon. The past year had taught them both the value of these quiet moments together. No need to fill every silence with words, comfortable in simply being together. "I have something for you," Carter said finally, reaching into the pocket of his coat. "An anniversary gift of sorts." He handed Maddie a small velvet box. Her eyes widened as she took it, her gaze moving from the box to his face and back again. "Carter, open it," he encouraged softly. With slightly trembling fingers, Maddie opened the box. Inside was a key, not an antique one like those used at the inn, but a modern one. "A key?" she questioned, looking up at him with confusion. "To a brownstone in the West Village," Carter explained. "I bought it last month. It's being renovated now, nothing too fancy, just updates to make it comfortable. I thought, we might need a place in the city that feels like ours. Not my penthouse, but somewhere new. A place we build together, like we've been doing with the inn." Maddie stared at the key, then at Carter. Her expression a mixture of surprise and something deeper. "You bought us a house in New York?" "Only if you want it," Carter clarified quickly. "I know we've talked about finding a better solution than you staying in hotels or at my place when you visit. Somewhere that could feel like home to both of us." "It's a big step," Maddie said softly. "It is," Carter agreed, "but it's just a house. The home part that's something we create together, wherever we are." Maddie closed the box and held it tightly in her hand. "You know, when we met, I thought you were just another rich guy passing through, someone who'd leave and forget all about this place and the people in it. And now? Now I know better," Maddie said with a smile. "You're stubborn and hard-working and surprisingly good at chopping vegetables, and you really see me in a way no one ever has before." She stepped closer, her free hand coming up to rest against his cheek. "Yes, I want the house in New York, but more importantly, I want the life we're building here, there, wherever we are together." Carter felt a surge of joy so intense it nearly took his breath away. "I love you, Maddie Vega. I love you too. Carter Quinn, she replied, billionaire sous chef extraordinaire. As the sun dipped lower, painting the snowy landscape in shades of pink and gold, Carter pulled Maddie close and kissed her a promise of all that was to come. One wrong turn in a snowstorm had led him exactly where he needed to be, to the person he was meant to find, to the joy he hadn't known he was missing. Sometimes getting lost was the only way to truly find your way home.